This is one of my favorite stories to share because I've been telling it for the past 3 years, and it's the story of America's last vampire. This is the grave of Mercy Brown in the graveyard of Chestnut Hill Baptist Church in Exeter, Rhode Island. She died in the late 1800s, but her story still influences modern paranormal stories and media. Mercy lived with her family in Exeter at a point in time when tuberculosis, which was referred to as consumption, was running rampant and modern medicine was only starting to ramp up, so there were some small towns, like Exeter, Rhode Island, that still held superstitious beliefs. In 1884, Mercy's mother, Mary Eliza, and her oldest sister, Mary Olive, unfortunately passed away from tuberculosis. Almost 10 years later, Mercy and her only brother Edwin contracted the disease, but Mercy had a rare form called galloping tuberculosis, so she wasn't showing symptoms at first and it went under the radar. Because there was no cure at the time, Edwin was sent out west where it was believed the air was cleaner. Eventually, Mercy succumbed to her illness and also passed away at the age of 19. Her father, George, was devastated. He already lost so many family members, and his son wasn't showing any signs of improvement, so Edwin came home to be with his remaining family. George, beside himself, was desperate and willing to do whatever it takes to save his only son. He asks his friends and neighbors for advice, and they convince him that the reason for all of his misfortune is that someone in his family must be a vampire. This may not have been the terminology they used, but they were referring to a deceased family member who was sucking the lifeblood out of the living family members. The identity of the vampire is determined by whoever's corpse is the best preserved, so George Brown had his wife and daughters exhumed. Mercy's mother and sister had been dead for some time and were decomposed. But Mercy was more preserved, with some blood still in her heart. This was likely due to the fact that she had died more recently and during a very cold winter. When she died, the ground was frozen over, so for 2 months before she could be buried, her body was stored in this above-ground crypt in freezer-like conditions. Because Mercy was the most preserved, she was believed to be the vampire. So now what? Her heart and liver were then burned either atop her tombstone or on a nearby rock. The ashes mixed with water to create a tonic, which was then fed to Edwin in hopes he would be cured. As I'm sure you've guessed, this did not cure him, and he still passed away, because there was no cure for tuberculosis, and there's no such thing as vampires. After being desecrated, her body was finally laid to rest in this graveyard. Today, her gravestone is set securely in place to avoid being stolen. Believe it or not, her case was one of many similar cases that contributed to the New England vampire panic, but this case in particular made it into the newspapers, and a young theater promoter living across the ocean came across this article. This man's name was Bram Stoker. Many scholars believe that Mercy was the inspiration for the character Lucy in Dracula, as well as the inspiration for other famous short stories. This story from rural Rhode Island is still something we talk about to this day, making this a major event in paranormal history. It is one of the best documented cases of the exhumation of a corpse in order to perform rituals to banish an undead manifestation. As per usual, urban legends followed. It is said that if you knock on her gravestone 3 times and ask, "Mercy Brown, are you a vampire?" her spirit will appear or even speak to you. Others say if you hide a little ways from her grave, you may see her walking through the graveyard. I hope you enjoyed this mini video. Please subscribe and check out my TikTok for more videos like this.